Hi there. This video will cover how to develop your 4 main functions of your function stack for Myers-Briggs. If you're not familiar with the cognitive functions, I suggest you watch my previous video on cognitive functions to get a high-level overview, or else some of this won't make as much sense. At a high level, you have 4 functions in your function stack: your dominant, inferior, auxiliary, and tertiary. And the order here is actually a little strange. This is your first one, your second one, your third one, and your fourth one. Okay, so let's get started. So generally, approximately, you'll develop your 4 functions in this order. Dominant 6 to 12, auxiliary ages 12 to 20, then tertiary 20 to 35, and inferior 35 plus. Obviously, you can develop them partially at different ages, but this is an approximation, and honestly, everyone is a bit different. It says here that without knowing the type theory, people tend to develop slower than the above outline, so that's why I really like studying this, so I can develop a little faster. And honestly, this could really be years. Like, you go, especially if you grow up in a bad environment without supportive people, you can really be stuck in a rut from a lot of the difficulties that your type gives you. So let's get started. So as a reminder, there are 8 cognitive functions, and they're listed here. There's one for sensing, intuition, thinking, and feeling, and there's an extroverted one and introverted one. So if it ends with an I, it's an introverted; ends with an E, it's an extroverted. And over here is just a one-word summary of what each of them are. So SI is familiarity, NI is predictability, TI is coherence, FI is congruency, SE is stimulation, NE is inspiration, TE is structure, and FE is amicability. Normally, basic dominant function development comes pretty easily. Like, it's your most natural thing, and some people think of it as it's your natural filter to the world. So whatever comes into your mind from the world, it'll naturally go to your first function. I am an INTP, and I'm TI dominant. So naturally, everything for me, I start thinking about it, and it's hard for me not to think about a lot of things. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about your dominant function, since most people don't have a problem making this strong. Like, it can always be stronger and more balanced, but I really want to focus more on the balance in this video. Okay, next is your inferior function, which is actually your fourth function and your weakest one. But it's the next on the list, so I'm going to talk about that. Typically, your first function and your dominant function and your fourth function will be at ends of each other. Like, they're kind of opposites of each other. Usually how it goes is, okay, let's say you have, like, your intuition is opposite of your sensing, and your thinking is opposite of your feeling. So for me, so I'm a TI dominant, and the opposite of thinking is feeling. So my inferior is feeling, and it's extrovert, unlike my dominant, which is introverted. That's generally how it works. So here's what happens when you try to repress your inferior, or you're not using it very well. So SI, which was predictability, you might see it as being fussy about the details, and you might not like it. Generally, your inferior will be something that you don't naturally like. For me, for extrovert feeling, I can sense it, but feelings has not been easy in my life sometimes. That's part of how a lot of INTPs are. They feel like feelings get in the way of a lot of things, especially their grandmaster models of thinking, and things would be a lot easier if people weren't so emotional. So this is just generally how people don't like their inferiors. So NI, prone to believing wild intuitions. You probably use your NI kind of recklessly, and you're like, okay, you get a spark of intuition every now and then, but it's kind of wild. TI, desperate to be seen as intelligent, so you might see TI as that. You might see people who think a lot as trying to prove themselves to others, and you might not like that about yourself, so you avoid working your TI. FI, taking extreme, absolute moral stances. So yeah, FI is known for having good principles or strong principles, and yeah, taking it unbalanced, you'll be very extreme in absolutes. And I find in general, for most things in life, if you're too extreme about just about anything, you'll quickly get out of balance and it'll cause some problems in other parts of your life. If you're SE is like the feeling, like being present and knowing the world around you and being aware. So impulsive behavior or emotional eruptions, yeah, being like too in the moment, getting too caught up in your energy, that could be pretty easy. If you're any is seeing all the possibilities with your intuition, indulging whatever wild idea pops up. Yep. If your any is weak, that's one of the weaknesses of any, so that will come up. TE is usually structure, making plans very easily. So inexplicably argumentative or controlling. Yeah, if you have your master plan, and you have your structure, usually you can argue kind of well, and you'll be controlling because you want people to follow your structure. And inferior FE, cynically misjudging people or society. So FE, you'll generally have like you'll be more aware of people around you, and you might see the bad parts of them. So yeah, I see it sometimes. Like sometimes I can see things around me, and I have to be careful about what model I place about people because sometimes I'll be very negative. Like, oh, these people are like really bad. One thing that I'm guilty of is I think a small percentage of people like to change in life. Like it's less than like over 90+% of people don't want to change, and like it can be a very cynical or misjudging mindset. Maybe not misjudging, but it can be very cynical. And even if it's true, like it's not healthy for you to have it and focus on it. So focus is a big thing for that. So that's one of the reasons why you have to be aware of your inferior function, because being aware is the first step. You'll notice that sometimes you'll blow out because of your inferior function, or you'll feel a lot of discomfort, and until you like can develop it better, you'll be having a lot of problems in your life. INTPs, they I'll give you an example since it's my type. So we're known for exploding, like being generally calm, and we won't seem to react too much to people's emotions. But one thing that will happen is maybe like once a year or so, we'll explode at people. And I think I exploded like 1 or 2 months ago at some of my friends, um, for various reasons. But it just happens. So these things tend to show dark sides of us, and we kind of have to accept it for a while and grow from it. That's the healthiest way. Okay, so yeah, so this is a table that shows you what happens if you have this dominant function and you have this inferior function and you repress it. Like you use your dominant too much. Like for me as a TI, oh, it's right here. So I'll tend to use my thinking to try to filter out everything, and I'll use it as a hammer to solve everything. And so I'll try to avoid using feelings. Instead, I'll probably use models. So when someone does something, I'll be like, oh, I can see that this is their emotion, and I'll respond in this way. Since it's always in a thinking mindset, I tend to be insensitive when I do this, and also you're not as present because you're filtering everything through thinking, and it's just I don't know, it doesn't feel good, even if it works sometimes. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I've modeled this person perfectly. I know what's going on. Like you're the same old person as this other person, and like it works a lot of the time, to be honest. Like my predictions are sometimes very accurate, but it can come off bad, and in the long run you can grow and be better than this. That's the way I see it. So if you're an SI, who avoids your NE, so like you'll be very immobile. If you're an NI who involves also like these are just examples. I think this is only 8 of the types out of 16. So sorry if you're not one of the 8 here, but NI um, avoids SE, you'll be unrealistic. Yeah, so you have intuition, but you don't really pay attention to what the world is really like. Everyone over TI and FE is insensitive. FI without TE is helpless. So it's kind of like FI is your moral principles, but TE is like your structure and getting things done. So you'll be helpless. You have all these feelings, all these things, like powerful emotions of how you see the world, but you can't do anything about it. SE without NI is evasive. So yeah, you're always in the presence and you don't look as deep, so you kind of avoid the future and long planning. NE without SI is scattered. Yeah, I have NE as my second function, so I can see that sometimes. I try to use my NE, my intuition, and see a lot of possibilities, but then it's hard for me to really get down to business and do things sometimes. TE without FI is controlling. So yeah, that's actually a problem I think with ENTJs or maybe in other types. but they have this like very strong controlling function of getting things done, and they're natural leaders. But like they're not as aware of like how other people's feelings, or I guess in this case is their own feelings and why they're doing things. So sometimes like for ENTJs specifically, they're not sure why they're doing things. Like they might be doing it just for their own gain, or they might be doing it for other people. If they're doing it for other people, that generally leads them to more healthier lifestyle and people will like them better. But if they're doing it for just their own gain, they'll be less sensitive and yeah, they'll be very controlling. FE without TI is conforming. Oh yeah. So FE is like usually they like harmony. They like considering other people's feelings and adapting to make everyone feel good. But like if you never really think about stuff and like you'll just conform to others and you won't grow in that way. So that's your dominant and inferior like relationships and some dynamics that come with that. Okay, next let's talk about your auxiliary function, which is your second function. This is called your sidekick function. So some things to note. So if your dominant function is a perceiving function, then you generally need to gather a lot of data, and you have to balance it out with a T or an F. So for those of you who don't know, um, so this is typically how it will work. So if you have an S or an N as your dominant, you'll also have an S or N as your inferior, and your middle two functions will be T and F. Similarly, if you're a T or F dominant, your inferior will be the opposite T or F, and then your middle functions will be S or N. So you can always count on your middle two functions to be of the same flavor, and flavor I mean sensing and intuition or thinking and feeling. Um, Overall, it helps balance you out, and yeah. So if you have an S or N as your dominance, you know your auxiliary or your second function is going to be T or F. And likewise, if you're a T or F, you know your auxiliary is going to be an S or an N. For me, I'm a TI dominant, and my auxiliary is NE, so that follows the model. Also, they're opposite in terms of introversion and extroversion. So if you're introverted dominant, then your second one will be extroverted, and vice versa. And that helps because yeah, it helps balance things out. So it kind of gives you an outlet. If you're an introvert, this gives you an outlet of how to be extroverted, and if you're extroverted, this gives you an outlet on how to be introverted, because it's good to be both. That's what it says here. So let's go over some of the dynamics. So one dynamic that I'm talking about here is um, how your dominance and your auxiliary interact. Okay, so let's say you have dominant SI, you have an FE that's auxiliary. Well, your dominant XI will be inflexible because it's more habitual, but your FE is open to social feedback. So if you use them both together, you can see how that kind of works together. You're inflexible, but then you become open to feedback, so you'll overall grow. Like you need a balance of both, like knowing yourself plus also being open to other people's thoughts. Um, if you're NI if you're NI dominant, you might be distorted because you believe in your own vision. But if you have TE, you can use it to correct faulty behaviors and actions, especially taking action. So as your NI is your vision, but if you use your TE to actually do things, over time as you do things, you'll be able to get feedback from it. You also make progress on your vision. TI is insensitive with auxiliary SE. So insensitive, but gathers new facts or experiences. That helps a lot. I know TI in particular, since I have it. We're prone if we only have the same information all the time. We have the same static models, and like we just do the same thing over and over again, have the same beliefs all the time. But SE would help us gather new facts or experiences because it's being very present. If you're FI dominant, you'll feel powerless possibly. If you use any, you can explore alternatives and possibilities. Yeah, that's good. FI is seen as being rigid sometimes because it's your own principles, but any, seeing all the possibilities, you can see how that balances each other out. SC impulsive, yeah, they have a lot of physical energy. FI define moral boundaries, yeah, that's a nice balance. Because if you're impulsive, but if you have your introvertedness to like define what really matters to you, you can use that to guide you better. Any impractical TI analyze effects precisely, yeah. If you have too many ideas but you can't really use them at all, it's kind of useless. So you need something to help figure out how to use those ideas. So TI can help analyze it. TE controlling, this was like having good structure. And SI reflect on subjective priorities. Yeah, that's good. Like it's extrovert controlling, but reflection. And FE conforming with NI to reflect on subjective meaning. Yeah, that's good. This is like you deciding what to do, especially in social situations, and this is reflecting what's happening. And like this, for I think 90 plus percent of people, just knowing that if they just learning about their auxiliary function and knowing that they develop it, they'll be a lot more healthy. I think that's a big step. It's a very simple view of it, and honestly, I feel like not all types would appreciate this type theory because it gets kind of complicated. Um, but for me, the auxiliary function balancing was like very like mind blowing. It was like, oh yeah, and it's cool. Like what's really cool about it is that your auxiliary is fairly strong to some extent. Like it's not naturally as strong as your dominance, but it's not considered weak. It's like it's relatively easy to develop compared to other things in your life. And like for most people, they'll be able to see to some extent how like they've seen the strength of their auxiliary function. Like, oh yeah. For me, it was my extrovert intuition. I'm like, oh yeah, I see that. Like I can see a lot of possibilities, but I do feel like I'm so dominant in TI. And yeah, this was about development. So if the auxiliary function actually remains unhealthy or undeveloped, you'll actually not be able to develop your other functions as well. So that's why it's really important to focus on your auxiliary if like you're taking nothing else from this video. Um, and if you remember earlier, like the auxiliary function can be developed from like 12 to 20. So if you're way older in this and you haven't developed your auxiliary function, you probably should. But I feel like what I hear from a lot of people sometimes is like I've met some people at, I think close to their 40s and they've developed quite well, but it seems like it took them a while to get there. Versus when I talk to people my age or younger, it seems like they're not as developed. So yeah, rehashing, you should develop your functions because it's kind of a roadmap, like a natural roadmap for you. Okay, tempting tertiary function. So this section talks about the tertiary loop that some people talk about, which honestly I don't see very often. I've seen it in some YouTube videos, and I was really wondering how this fit in the whole theory. Um, the reason why the tertiary function can be a problem is because we're going back to how your functions are laid out. So if you're introverted dominant, then your auxiliary, your second one, will be extroverted, but then your third one will also be introverted. So it goes like IE for introvert extroverted, or EI extrovert introverted. Because your tertiary function is like the same like extrovert introvert as your dominant, it can actually make your dominant worse, like the development. And we get something called tertiary loop. Um, so like you're not using it for like properly for like healthy growth, but you're kind of using it to improve your defensive mechanism, like as like a defensive mechanism. And yeah, you're not really growing, and you kind of and what's really bad about it is it also stunts the growth of your auxiliary function, your second function, and it can cause a lot of problems. So this table over here shows that your auxiliary functions over here and your tertiaries over here, and if you are trying to develop your auxiliary, your tertiary can get in the way. So over here, let's see. If your auxiliary is FE, where you're becoming more aware of the emotions around you, then and your tertiary is TI, so you're trying to face some feedback from society with your FE, but your tertiary says here's why you're wrong, and it just yeah it becomes bad. You become isolated. If you try to use your TE to confront weakness, you use your FI to say my act is justified, because a lot of it's in this case it's because like you're reaching more internally, um, and I don't know. I'm not gonna say introversion is bad, but like that's one of the bad things. Like with introversion, you can be kind of justified. Um, while with extroversion, you have to like pay more attention to the real world. So you, in this case, you just fail because you don't grow because you tried to confront your weakness, but you said you were justified. If your auxiliary is SE, then you're trying to seek new experiences, but your NI says no. I won't change anything. My vision's correct. So you're self-defeating. You have NE, so you try out new ideas. But your SI says, no, I'm comfortable here. So you're just stuck. Oh, and this is actually what my type does. INTPs, so we try out new ideas, but your SI says, nah, I'm fine. So this is what we call a TI-SI loop for INTPs. So we just get stuck. That's why I encourage INTPs to just take in more information and try new things. Like, develop some system, even if it's not like the most sophisticated system, because you gotta get out of that rut. FI to restrict passions. TE, we all exploit advantages. So this is dishonorability. So I guess this is like morals versus just do things. TI, restrict independence. FE, only wrong if you're caught. This is using FE in an unhealthy way, because FE is like knowing the emotions around you, and if you know the emotions but you use them wrong, then yeah, you become fraudulent. SI, confront mistakes. Edney, no, it's not my fault. It's you're just finding other reasons why it's not your fault, making excuses, and you become deflecting. NI, confront emptiness. SE, if I keep moving, I matter. So this is like keeping yourself busy, and you'll become aggressive. Um, so yeah, I. That's why sometimes you might feel like your tertiary function is kind of well developed. That's because you're kind of using it in a not so well way sometimes. Or you could be a healthy person, but a lot of people aren't. I'm still working on this as well. Like INTPs are known for doing the same things over and over again. Sometimes it's good, but other times like it's just like nah, you gotta like mix it up. Um, so this section, I think these are questions you can ask, or well, I'm just gonna skip this section. This final table over here shows what happens if you have all your four functions balanced to some extent. So you start off with your dominance, and the flaw over here is that it makes you close off your SI. But with your feeling, you can get social feedback, and then you can, if your TI is healthy, you can change when you're wrong, and then you're more receptive to new ideas in your extrovert intuition. I don't actually know what solistic means. But you guys can like read this whole table. At this point, it should become more obvious, especially if you know what each of these cognitive functions are. But yeah, I'll keep the link to this in the description so someone else can read it. But this thing's like really long, and actually here's like the interesting parts, which I had to let my computer auto read for me. But the quote is, the first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it. So this is actually what happens. This is what it takes to actually grow in a lot of these ways. Because one of the fallacies that a lot of people do when they try to study Myers-Briggs is that they identify too much with their type, and they feel like they identify with it, and identifying with something and having identity is very powerful. It helps you a lot, but it also hurts you because if you're too into your self and like you see yourself in a certain way, like you might not be able to get out of it. So this goes into like the 7 stages of how to like get better. The first one is kind of like not going at all, and the second part is like actually going to a growth mindset. But it's very interesting. But again, this is very long, so this is why I'm making these videos to some extent, because I think most people don't know about the site, and it's a lot to read. So it's nice if you have someone else to go over it. That's it for me. This is kind of a random impromptu video, but hopefully it helps someone, and I'm happy to teach it because it helps me understand this topic better, and hopefully it helps someone else. So have a great night, and bye.